Welcome to The Life of Try, the podcast where innovation, reinvention, personal growth, and discovery begin with one simple choice: to try. I'm Wynne Leon, and in this episode, I'm with author and co-founder of the New York Insight Meditation Center, Joseph Schmidt. We have a great conversation about his book of short stories, The Torchbearer, and the art of creating without any of the elbow grease effort that sometimes is associated with trying. Joseph's stories are like quiet gifts. They open the reader up with a quiet sense of insight and seemingly without trying. He tells us about his writing process, which surprisingly happened without blood, sweat, or tears. Joseph tells us about being a volunteer chaplain and how he was taught by a Zen monk how to engage with patients in the most helpful way. We tie that together with his insight about his meditation practice, which has a similar openness and naturalness. This is a great conversation about openness, flow, and insight that come from a beautiful book of stories and a willingness to let creation happen. I know you'll love it. Hi, Joseph.
Hello there. How's it going, Wynne?
Oh, great. Congratulations on the release of your book of short stories, The Torchbearer. Can we start with, can you give us an elevator pitch for the book?
Yes, it's a book of 21 enchanting stories. The book actually came to me in an interesting way. I was in India. I was in an ashram going through a meditation program. And in between meditations, one evening, I had some time alone and I felt relaxed. I was not distracted. And my mind just said, what should I do with my time? And I just, out of nowhere, said, I could write something. And I'd never written a book. I'd done essays in college, but the whole experience was quite revealing. And that as I started to write, I put my pen in my hand and I just started to write. And this story, The Torchbearer, just moved through me. The longer I wrote, the more it became a very simple process of releasing the words, the sentences. I became very intrigued in what was going to happen because I didn't pre-plan.
Right,
I was a partner. It wasn't like I was just, channel. It was like I was there. I was reading it. It was, my thoughts were involved, but I wasn't making this up. It was actually happening. The end is quite suspenseful, and I was just like, I felt like I was watching a movie. And when the end happened, it was like, I got to see what's going to is, and boom, that was it.
Wow.
I should add one more thing. That's the last story I wrote for 50 years. Then in the 90s, after I had left certain responsibilities at running a meditation center and my corporate job, I again had a time where I could let my mind open up and not be distracted in both internally and externally. And I thought, hey, I should try it again. And so that's when 20 more stories came through.
So that's interesting. So one story in the 1970s, and then you waited 20 years and got 20 more.
Well, it's more like 50 years. And
but the same process, that's interesting that the same process applies.
Yeah,
over that time.
I can't say it was quite as fluid, but
yeah,
it was, there was a little more thinking involved. I was a little more involved as a partner, but the writing approach worked very well. It was not, I didn't have to struggle to figure out what was next. Things came organically, naturally, intuitively.
Mm.
And so consequently, I think I felt different about the characters in the
Yeah.
story. I actually developed a caring relationship with them. I thought about them, because they were in a sense like meeting a new person
Mm-hmm.
that I hadn't really known. So it's like, here they are.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm. That is
and
so
I should
interesting.
add too, the
Yeah.
characters in my mind, again, I can't say that I intentionally created them this way, but they tend to have a more innocent, uh, witnessing approach to what's happening in
Mm-hmm.
their storylines. Typically, they encounter moments that change everything,
Yeah.
and that process of having, let's say, an innocent character and having something they're confronted with. So, in a sense, I see a similar process to the writing process I was using happening with them.
Mm-hmm.
They allowed their uh, this change or
Mm-hmm.
this answer, this next move in their life to be more of something that they discovered rather than something that they said, okay, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
uh, decide to make this choice, which
Right.
is fine, and I'm pro-choice.
Right.
I'm not
Right.
saying
Right.
that isn't the
That we
case,
should.
but I just see this as another avenue
Yeah, and
that,
it's
that
and it's
works.
interesting both, from that first story, the Torchbearers, you talk about how the ending revealed itself to you because it isn't a surprising ending, I
Yeah,
thought.
I had to read them a number of times to kind of
Yeah.
say, okay, what is this really saying? Because again, I wasn't consciously I didn't have an idea and said, okay, I'm going to put this message out there. Many of the characters, and I think in the transformations that they have, can be seen as models for a reader
Hmm.
or a guide. If they're going through, if they're not going to have the same situation
Hmm.
that is in the story, but something that they're confronted with that could change their lives dramatically, and see that, okay, this is being done here. I can learn from that. I can explore
Right.
ways that I can get through.
Yeah, I see that too. And you have such a fascinating background. You have a master's in psychology. Um, you have led the New York Insight Meditation Center as a founding member, executive director, and now sit on the board. Also as a volunteer chaplain. And obviously that's the experience that came in between the 50 years, right?
Right.
Do you think that those experiences of life, informed your stories as you saw those options and choices and shifts?
Definitely. What I see is I feel that life is moving along, and you are within life, and things are happening, so that there. I'm just going to throw this out. This is
Yeah.
may or not be accurate, but like 50% of the momentum and the things that happen to you in life just come at you because life brings them. Each one of these kind of opened up new doors for me to see life, and also so to learn, which I think can be difficult, to
Hmm.
appreciate life, almost like go in first with appreciation rather than going in with, I
Hmm.
don't know if this is going to hurt me, but have gain some level of trust, so at least you
Right.
can get in the
Right.
door, and maybe some good things will
Yes. Yes.
will happen.
Yeah.
The probably the I mean, obviously psychology opened me up to just think about the way the mind works, and the way my you know
Hmm.
upbringing with my family, how that set me up on a certain path. But feel that becoming a hospital chaplain probably showed me a way of being with myself and also with others that was fairly, it's not like it's a secret at all. It's something that in meditation, people are told to do this, but in somehow in the hospital chaplaincy, it really made a impact and allowed me to do a good job there and not burn out. You know, people oftentimes do a decent job, but it's so stressful or they tend to burn out.
And we're
I
talking
never.
about going in with that open attitude.
Well, it is, I'll tell you a little story. As I started my internship, it was a program in New York called the Zen Center for Contemplative Care, and it was training hospital chaplains. Two-year program, and I had been running the center, the meditation center, and these two Zen monks would come in, and every now and then we'd have them teach. So I knew them, and so I thought, hey, you know what? I'm ready after my 12 years doing this. I was okay. I've kind of done all I can do here. So I went to the Zen guy that runs the program and interviewed with him. And he said, well, tell me why you'd like to be a hospital chaplain, you know? And I just thought that was, I mean, naturally, I just kind of wanted to be, but I had to say something. So I said, well, I'd like to help. And his head was going back and forth. He says, oh no. He said, that'll never last. That won't last.
Oh no, one of those helpful types.
And I was going, oh gosh, I really blew this. But what he said then was so helpful and perfect that it's in a sense, it's something I still apply in my life. He said, when you go into a hospital room, you've never met this person. He started off first saying, when you go in, you stop, you drop everything from your mind. You go in empty, no preconceptions, no trying to help, no ideas that, oh, if I do this, it will help, or that will accept. Because when you go in, that person who doesn't know you, how they will respond to you is if they see you with an agenda, they see you as a person coming in trying to proselytize or trying to make them feel good, you know, all that stuff, it's not going to be effective. They might just ask you to leave, or they might just, you know, go along with it. But if you can go in there and connect with them and let them be your guide, in fact, show that you are there to walk with them, not that you are coming in with a package of goods.
Right.
That worked every time that it could work. There were other times where a patient just didn't want to see anybody, so I didn't stay. Some patients just love to talk about what they believe in religious life, so I'd listen to them, you know.
Right.
But those that were in that innocent state of being could allow themselves to open up. I came in with, you know, as innocently as I could. You know, I'm sure unconsciously there are things popping up around, but to the extent you can. And when two people recognize that, there's an almost immediate connection.
That's amazing, because it ties back to that openness that so many of your stories evoke, but also the openness that you had when you wrote that first story, and when you when you wrote, because you just have to empty yourself, is according to, you know, what you said. Then things can happen from there. Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. I mean, one of the things, there's so much depth in your writing, and I was really captured by how you you captured those moments of transformation, whether it's being stepping up or seeing things differently or even dying. I mean, there's just a quiet to those moments as you write them. And it that seems to tie into just what we were talking about, which is that it doesn't come in with an agenda. It comes in with a quiet. Can you say more about writing those scenes, or is that just part of, do you think that came from your approach?
Well, number one, I really appreciate that you
Yeah.
recognize that, because when I read them, and I still read them,
Hmm.
not every day, of course, but
Yeah.
every couple of times a year, I'll bring it out and I'll say, and every time I read it, it'll be interesting to me. And what you say about it being quiet is exactly the way I feel. I just hadn't thought of it that way. And when uh, my publicist sent me some of the prompts that you were thinking of, I thought, wow, yes, they do have a quietness,
Mm.
which is what I wanted. Instead of struggling with the story or storyline, they actually are innocently moving with the life of that storyline.
Mhm, mhm,
I didn't introduce a lot of the inner
mhm,
decision making that the person was
mhm,
having
mhm,
internally. I would more or less describe what was happening and the character, what was happening as they went through that.
mhm,
So, in a sense, the peacefulness that I felt could also be reflected in that the character was feeling that quietness or that peacefulness as these changes were going on, or as
mhm,
these
mhm.
opportunities for transformation were
Right,
happening.
right.
Um, but you helped clarify something,
Hmm.
which which is something also I just wanted to comment on.
Mm.
I find going on a podcast like this, I'll learn more about the book from
Yes,
other folks because,
right.
you know, but this quietness is, I thought that's exactly the tone I was hoping to
Mm.
have.
Well,
Yeah.
congratulations, because you really hit
Yeah.
it. And isn't it interesting to hear? Well, first of all, to have to talk about your work is an interesting reflection, but also to have your words reflected back to you, um,
Yes. Yeah.
is you're like you get to find out a little bit more about how it lands for other people, right? And we're such unique creatures that's fascinating, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. One of the transformations that I thought was interesting is in the short story, The Minister. And
Okay.
he was going again with the flow. I mean, he just, he's in Grand Central Terminal and he just decides to step onto the clock. And if I could just read, although uncertain of his purpose, he was overcome with conviction.
Yes.
His
Yes.
usual speech impediment was nowhere evident as powerful words erupted from the depths of his soul, words that had always been there, waiting for the proper moment were set free. And,
Yes.
and that's such an interesting, again, going with the flow, opening up, trusting the moment. And it sounds like that sort of mirrors your writing process in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm very happy you mentioned that story.
Yeah.
Of all the stories, I would kind of put that one at the top for
Hmm.
me in terms of what it meant to me, coming from family with a father that was a
Hmm.
minister.
Hmm.
And it came to me that this first act of going, he felt this presence, and it was like it became conviction to him to do it. One of the things I like to do is have a person in a normal course of events, and then they do something
Hmm.
unusual, and that moment is what
Hmm.
changes their lives. So that he takes that extra step.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
it's interesting since both you and I share that background of having fathers that were ministers.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why the story resonated with me as well, especially. But it was a good
Right.
moment coming from men of such conviction when you find your own conviction, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. What do you think about meditation and writing, or meditation and trying new things? How do you think those complement each other as you go through this process of publishing these stories?
My meditative life hasn't been generally involved in creating my art or being my art, but it has definitely, as an underlying practice, has influenced what I do. New York Insight is a mindfulness center. It's
Right.
common practice. It's become very, yeah, I don't know if you practice mindfulness.
Yeah, I do. And like Sharon Salzberg is
Oh,
associated
yeah,
with,
Sharon
right?
is one of our,
Yeah. And
when
I've
we,
heard it mostly from Dan Harris on his podcast. I've not,
yeah, Dan
yeah,
is,
yeah,
sure. Sharon teaches with us
yeah.
from the very start. We're now 27 years
Amazing.
in the making. There's different ways. And mindfulness has been described, I think, very well. Years ago, I was just feeling kind of stale with
Hmm.
the practice, which does happen. Everybody will have that. I was reading other things in science about reality and the universe, and then I read other meditation centers, and I just found a very subtle shift in how I sat and meditated, and the way I the way I see it, it brings a more energetic focus,
Mm-hmm.
and time is always moving. Nobody knows what's going to happen next, which is actually a quite profound reality that nobody really thinks about it much because it's the way it's always been. But to know that nobody knows what's going to happen next. The challenge of life is being at that point where you go from the what you've known into that moment where it becomes unknown.
Hmm.
And that edge or that cusp of a wave as it moves, mindfulness is where consciousness meets the universe or
Hmm.
nature. And that moment of connection, of meeting, is the only thing that you ever know.
Hmm.
Everything besides that is either a memory of the past or you're simulating a thought about what it's going to be like or a hope. But
Hmm.
that shift from the unknown to the known, to me, is the edge where consciousness is doing its work. It's right where the rubber meets the road.
Hmm.
Now you can't always stay there, so you fall off. As you meditate, you lose your focus, and then you remember to come back. And what I think many people miss about meditation is that that meditation is something that they have to do, and which I think is missing the ease of it, in that moment where consciousness meets where time moves
Hmm.
you,
Hmm.
that is always there. It never leaves. You can fall off. All you got to do is step back on. And many meditation teachers have said to be mindful, you have to remember
Hmm.
to be back at that
Right, right, right.
focus. If you keep with that particular vision of mindfulness, every moment that when you join and move into the unknown, you're having a fresh uh, moment of reality that never stops. It continues. It continues. So that the beginnings of life are endless.
Mm.
Every moment, it's an endless opportunity that here's something to be mindful about. I do have a little more to say. I don't want to
Yeah, yeah, no,
keep
great. I
going on
love
this.
it.
Uh, and there is also the message in mindfulness that when you are being mindful, also you bring a certain sense of curiosity and care when you meet that moment. And I was going to say as a witness, but it's actually an engaged witness. You're not
Mhm.
standing back and saying, "Oh, let it do its thing." You actually are involved in that. You actually are participating in that moment. I think that that's what to me has energized things a bit from my
Mhm.
previous, where I was kind of sitting there waiting for something to happen. Let me be enlightened.
Mhm. Mhm. Right, right.
Yeah. And now it's more like, okay, we're co-creating this
Mhm.
experience of reality, and it never stops. It's the
Mhm.
moment is an ongoing moment. It's
Yeah,
almost like it's less than a moment. It's an
yeah.
instant. And
Well, I love what you said there, that the beginnings of life are endless. There seems to be, it's just circling back to what we've talked about sort of throughout this conversation,
yeah,
the openness, the
yes,
openness to creating an openness so that you can write, and creating an openness so that you can meet other people, and that chaplaincy role, and
yes,
creating an
yes,
openness to the next moment, to the
yes,
next beginning.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Beautiful.
And it's such a dynamic process. Yeah, and
Mhm.
the message I'm starting to catch a little bit is that I don't know how many people, when they meditate, see the dynamism,
Mhm.
potentially the only thing you can really ever know for sure, because that is happening right now. You're conscious of it.
Mhm.
If you go beyond that, they were getting into projections,
Mhm.
memories, and other things. And I have this idea that the universe wants to be recognized.
Mhm.
And so, how is that happening? Well,
Mhm.
here we are. We got 8.2 billion humans on this earth, and they all have a consciousness. So, we're doing this work. We're consciously letting the universe show itself to us. I think having an intentional practice or a meditation where you are involved in that more consciously brings it to another level. And some way I like to
Yeah.
say, well, we're helping the universe become aware of itself,
Yeah.
but at the same time, by doing this, we're discovering who we are and all the fact that we are
Right.
the universe, we belong.
Mhm.
And a sense of belonging is one of the things that many people struggle with. Where do I belong? Either do I have friends or do I belong from a cosmic standpoint? What am I doing here? By being in that role of mediating between the universe and the human,
Mhm.
you are building a bond of belonging, because
Mm.
you are seeing it happen, you're seeing it transform yourself, you're feeling yourself harmonizing with it, or at least becoming more comfortable with it.
Yeah. Building a bond of belonging. That's beautiful. Well, I want
Yeah.
to end this interview with another quote from your book, because I think it just sums up what you've said so well here, and it's from the short story called The Book. And
Ah.
it says the epigraph was just one sentence: give everything you have to everyone you meet. Feeling a surge of
Yes.
confidence, I turned
Yeah.
to the first chapter and boldly began to read.
Uh,
And I just love that quote, because I think your book does that so well. I think this,
yeah.
your
Yeah.
talking to you has done
Yeah.
this so well. So I urge everybody listening to this to open the Torchbearer and
Yeah.
begin to read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for bringing that last quote.
Well, thank you, Joseph, so much for taking the time to
Oh, Wynne,
talk with
I
me.
so much enjoy getting
Yes.
to know you and
Mm,
speaking with you. So,
likewise.
yeah.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Uh,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you for listening. Our music was written for us by the incredible duo of Jack Canfora and Rob Koenig. For show notes and more great inspiration, see avitiva.com, avitiva.com.